Colour theory isn't confusing, but somehow everyone makes it confusing. This mini introduction to colour theory is going to give you a lot to think about, so be sure to save this video to watch it again later and get the free Colour Wheel PDF book. It's linked below. We're going to understand why some colours look ugly and why other colours fit together well. We'll uncover the truth about warm and cool colours, and I'll show you how you can create customizable colour wheels in minutes. To start with, we need to run through the basics of colour theory. Feel free to skip ahead using the chapters if you already know this stuff, but it's best to go over it. Red, yellow and blue are our primary colours. A primary colour is a hue we cannot mix from two other colours. So to have a red, we need the pure pigment. The term hue is another word for colour family. For example, yellow is a colour family, as is red. Next, we have secondary colours. These are colours which can be created by mixing two of our primary colours together. If we mix red and blue together, we get purple, so that goes here. Moving around, we mix blue and yellow, and this gives us green, which goes here. Lastly, yellow and red make our final secondary colour of orange. In a moment, we'll look at why some primary colours mix more saturated secondary colours than others. If you look at this wheel, you'll notice that the purple is quite dull, so more on that in a moment. Mixing our primary colours has created a basic colour wheel of primary and secondary colours. There are also tertiary colours, so let's make a third wheel and find those. If we mixed blue and green, we get a blue-green, and variations of this can be called a teal or a turquoise or a mint green. Mixing red and orange gives us a cadmium orange, which we can label red-orange. You can do this all the way around your colour wheel so that each colour appears to gradually fade into the next. Okay, so we have our primary, secondary and tertiary colours sorted. These are labelled inside the free Colour Wheel ebook, which is linked below, so download that just to get familiar with these terms. To understand how to make colours that go well together and fix the ugly colours, we need to know more about the characteristics of colours. We know there are colour families, and we know that some colours can mix together to make new ones. When it comes to finding colours which work well together, a good place to start is with harmonious colours. Harmonious colours, or if you want to be fancy about it, analogous colours, are three colours in a row on the colour wheel. So red, orange and yellow, these are harmonious. Orange, yellow and green, or green, blue and purple. These colours tend to go well together quite easily, so I like to think of them as harmonious. On the other end of the scale, you have complementary colours. These contrast each other, much like black and white do on a value scale. To find a complementary colour, you need a full colour wheel like this, and then you look for the colour directly opposite. For example, red and green, yellow and purple, or a red-orange and a blue-green. These colours can look jarring when they're placed next to each other, but they can also be highly effective at creating a better 3D illusion. Complementary colours have another trick up their sleeve, and one that can help us make our colour palettes look nicer. We'll see how this works in just a moment. But before we move on to advanced colour mixing, I'd like to draw your attention to warm and cool colours and the fact that these don't exist, or at least they can change. The idea that a colour can appear to change from warm to cool without being mixed differently is really important to colour theory and tells us that the characteristics of a colour are not fixed. Let's see how this works and why it's important. We might label blue as a cool colour and red as a warm colour, but we can have a warm blue and a cool red, so let me show you. The only thing that is fixed about warm and cool colours are either end of the scale. Much like black is the darkest value that you can get, and you can't mix a darker value. A pure blue-green is the coolest colour we can get, and it's not possible to make a colour that's any cooler. Likewise, on the other end of the scale, red-orange is the warmest colour, and if you look, you'll see that these are also complementary colours to each other, so they contrast each other as much as possible. Now, to figure out if the colour that you have is a warm or a cool, you firstly need to know what it's going to be put down next to. This comes back to what I was saying about colours appearing to change. This is because colour temperature is relative, which means we measure the temperature of a colour against the other colours on the page. So if the only colours that I were to use were a red, a purple and a blue, the red is going to be the warmest, the purple is going to be neutral, and the blue is going to be cool. The way to work it out is to create a little temperature scale. Whichever colour is closest to the blue-green, our coolest colour, will become your cool colour for that drawing, and whichever colour is closest to red-orange becomes your warm colour. So let's do another one. What if we had yellow, green and purple? In this case, purple would be the warmer colour and yellow-green the cooler. Yellow-green is just closer to the cool pole than purple. But remember that the characteristics of a colour can appear to change. Well, if we want to make purple a cool colour, we just need to change the other colours around it. Instead of using yellow-green, we need to make sure that purple is going to be the closest colour to the cool axis. So I'd need to use either reds, oranges, or a yellow-orange. All of those colours are further away from blue-green than purple. So in that context, purple will become a cool colour. In this way, the characteristics of colour are changeable, and it all depends on context. The same goes for any other characteristic of colour. So if we want a colour to look extra saturated and intense, surround it by colours that are nearly grey. Alright, so let's round up again. We know that our three primary colours of red, yellow and blue cannot be mixed from other colours. We know our secondary colours of orange, purple and green are created by mixing two primary colours together. We also know that neighbouring colours are called analogous or harmonious colours. And what's important is that these tend to go nicely together. On the other end of the spectrum, colours that contrast each other can sometimes look ugly and are complementary colours, which are opposites on the colour wheel. They can create a great amount of contrast and can also be used to create a better 3D illusion, like you can see on this line portrait that I did, where I've put yellow in the highlights and purple in the shadows to increase the contrast. Lastly, we know that how a colour appears to look is changeable and influenced by the other colours around it. We can see this quite easily when we look at colour temperature, whereby the only fixed rule is that a blue-green is the coolest colour and a red-orange is the warmest colour. Now we're ready to look more into mixing colours and matching colours for colour palettes. So far, we've only looked at pure colours. We haven't thought about greys or those sludgy browns. A grey doesn't just have to be a white plus black. A grey can be made by mixing any three different hues together, so yellow, blue and red, or by mixing two complementary colours. When two complementary colours are combined, we call this a chromatic grey. It's like a sludgy brown-grey colour. It depends on which colours you've mixed and the ratios of them. The thing is, these can be really useful as they help to balance our colours and provide contrast to the highly saturated pigments, which can give you a bit of a headache. These greys can also help to harmonise the two complementary colours in a drawing and tie your colour wheel together. They also provide insight into why the purple I have mixed on screen is so dark. The issue is I have a cyan for my blue, which is cool. It means it has green in it. We know that red and green are opposites on the colour wheel because they're complementary, and we can see on the screen that a green and red mix to create a non-colour or a chromatic grey. So, the presence of green in my blue paint means I can't mix a pure purple because the red clashes with the small amounts of green. So if you're trying to mix a secondary colour and it feels a bit dull, consider if the two primary colours you're using are neutral, or if, like mine, there is the presence of a complementary colour. This knowledge can help you to predict how certain colour mixes will come out and how to desaturate a colour. If I have a yellow that feels too bright and too bold and it's overtaking or clashing, I could add a tiny amount of purple and this will lessen the intensity of the yellow. I don't have to make it a full-on sludge grey, but I can use the idea of mixing complementary colours to help balance my colours better. Another method for desaturating colour, which means to reduce the intensity of the colour, is to mix white or black into them. Mixing whites into a colour is known as a tint. But more importantly, we are contaminating the original colour, and therefore we're desaturating it. You might not think of these colours as desaturated because they don't have a dirty or muddy look to them, but the presence of white reduces the intensity of the original pigment. These colours can be called pastel colours, and note that they all go nicely together. We'll return to this idea in a moment. You can also create shades of a colour by adding black into them. These muted colours will be darker and have less colour in them, so they are also desaturated. Both of these mixes work well. They look like harmonious colour palettes. The reason is that we have added a common factor to every different colour. One of them is white and the other one is black. This ties our colours together and creates cohesive palettes. Another important factor is that we have used only 3 original colours to create our entire palette from. What I mean is I haven't used a tube of red and then a tube of orange and then a tube of yellow. I've only used 3 tubes of paint, which are my 3 primary colours. From there, I've mixed all of my other colours. This reduces the range of colours I can create, such as not being able to mix a proper purple because my blue has a bit of green in it. And this restriction, much like the addition of white, makes my colours feel more harmonious and more similar to each other. The major issue people have when it comes to creating a colour palette is they use too many different pure pigments. I could have used a tube of emerald green to help mix my blue-green, and then a warm cadmium yellow to get a stronger orange. I could have used a carmine rose and an ultramarine blue to mix a brilliant purple, but all of these on the page at once will start to look busy, poorly matched, and disconnected. We haven't made them relatable to each other. In short, there are too many different variables happening on the page at once. By reducing your options or adding in a commonality, such as creating tints of your colours by mixing in a white or potentially mixing in a bit of a grey, you could start to create colours that relate to each other and they won't look wrong on the page. A great exercise to help you create palettes is to paint swatches of paper. This can help you not only find pleasing colour relationships, but also, and more importantly, to think about why certain colours don't look right together. Perhaps a complementary colour pairing of red and green looks off. Why is that? Is the green too blue and highly saturated, while the red is slightly warm and feels a bit dull next to the green? Then potentially a softer green with less saturation that has a little bit of yellow would work. Does it solve the problem? Equally, you could lose the red and replace it with a red-orange that is more vivid to better suit your vivid green. Colour is also highly subjective, and certain people love certain colour combinations. You can use your own personal preferences to help you create limited colour palettes. This is done by choosing 3 colours to start with, which will be your primary colours. These don't have to be red, yellow, and blue. They can be variations of those colours. Because these colours won't be pure primaries, just like my purple came out dull, your secondary and tertiary colours can become muted or closer to a chromatic grey. However, when variations of these are made as tints and shades, you can see that we have a vast variety of colours that feel well related to one another. When you stop and analyse these colour palettes, you might then notice that certain colour families are in fact totally missing. But when the colour palette is used all together, it feels cohesive and complete. The best way to start understanding all of this, and most importantly, the best way to start seeing that the characteristics of colours are changeable depending on the colours around it, is to start mixing your own colours. Begin as I have with your primaries and secondaries. Consider if your secondary colours are slightly desaturated. What does that tell you about the primary tubes of paint you're using? Try to create bad colour combinations on purpose and consider why these don't look right. Can you put words to it? Is it the colour family? Is it the saturation level and maybe one is too saturated and the other's quite dull? Is it to do with the colour temperature? One is warmer and one's cooler and they're just clashing. How could you change one of the colours to make them harmonise? Colour takes time and practice to both see and mix. Getting started is the only real way to learn. So, grab some paper right now, grab some paints, Download the free colour wheel book and get mixing.